front, I wouldn't recommend Damsel, but you can certainly watch it, which is the way a lot of Netflix movies would be described. And to Damsel's credit, it is better than a lot of Netflix movies, but it's still very much a Netflix film. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, certainly at this point, you've watched enough Netflix movies because they're free, no extra cost. Now, Millie Bobby Brown has an excellent relationship with Netflix, not just with Stranger Things, the role that put her on the map, made her a star, and she's very good in it. But then also the Enola Holmes films, 2 of them. I love those movies. Those are some of the best Netflix films. Very, very strong. And she took great care with those movies, producing them herself along with her sister Paige. Here, though, Millie Bobby Brown is only an executive producer, which means she's not as hands-on. She just kind of is overlooking things and making sure she has a say. That's basically what an executive producer does when they're actually in the movie. It just gives them a little power on set. But you can tell the difference. This is not as good as Enola Holmes. I wish Millie Bobby Brown had been more involved. I think the film probably would have turned out better than it has. First off, I'm going to say some good stuff about it. As I said, you can watch it. Now, first off, while this movie is well-intentioned, it misses the mark with some representation issues. It's a strong girl power film, as you would expect. Look at it. But so much so that I can't see guys or boys having an interest in it at all. Enola Holmes was much better balanced with Henry Cavill and Louis Partridge. On the one hand, I respect the film for going there and not holding back. It's a brutal, violent film, which we'll talk about a little bit more, because that was one of the most interesting things about it. But not having one stand-up guy in the entire movie, that's a choice. Some guys were I guess not really bad, but they were just in the background. Not one kind of developed character who's a guy who was okay. And I just think that's, I don't want to give away too many spoilers. I understand why they did what they did, but it just severely limits, I think, the audience for the film. All right, then there's the casting of Angela Bassett as Millie Bobby Brown's stepmother. She's not an evil stepmother, but the 2 stepdaughters that she has are not thrilled with her, and the role is extremely underwritten. So what's meant to bring diversity to the film just comes across as awkward. And yet another slight that poor Angela Bassett must suffer. Bassett could have easily been still in this movie as another character, but I guess they're leaning into the whole fairy tale thing, so they wanted to have a stepmother in it, but it just didn't work out. But when the film starts out, it is very much a fairy tale, impressively so, in fact, with grand locations, sets, and effective CGI. It looks good. It looks pretty good. The costumes, for the most part, are also excellent, except oddly, for Millie Bobby Brown. She's the executive producer. Why didn't she raise her hand and say, I feel these costumes could look better? She has a very unfortunate wig. Someone needed to zhuzh that wig. Makeup that's a little off. I'm not sure if it was a little too heavy or if the colors weren't good for her complexion, but the makeup didn't work. And then also the color choices of the wardrobe often. I was like, that's just not a good color on you, Millie. It just didn't put her in her best light. She looks her best once she eventually gets her shorter hair, which I guess that's the look they gave her on the poster. But she has that so late in the film that it's hardly in the film at all, and that's unfortunately when she looks her best. Although they do use her overly ornate medieval wedding dress in very unique ways once she has to get all MacGyver in the dragon cave. So that was kind of fun. I liked that. She is a fabulous, likable actress, though, which helps when the movie largely turns into a one-woman show, a fairy tale version of The Descent meets Ready or Not. Now, a lot of other actresses would have vogued for a role like this. Keira Knightley infamously vogued way too much. She vogued herself out of her career. And only recently has she stopped voguing, and I think that's one of the reasons she's been able to come back a little. But Millie Bobby Brown gets her Sandra Bullock on. Oh, it's fantastic, as she fights for her life. And she does an excellent job of not being a Mary Sue, but instead a resourceful young princess who has the expected swirl of emotions in such a horrifying situation. And the film, to its credit, even does a nice job setting up how she can have some physical abilities, thanks to her kingdom having fallen on hard times, and she has to resort to hard labor to try and help her people. Although, I wish they had explained why she knew how to use a sword. Swords are heavy in real life. It's not easy to swing them around. And yet she seemed, not only to be able to lift it up and swing it around, but have decent aim. And I'm like, no, I don't think that would be the case. Another big problem with the movie is that its plot is too thin. It's super thin. This is a wafer. A wafer of a movie. A lot of the movie hinges on the twist that she's sacrificed to the dragon instead of getting married to the prince. But that's given away in the trailer. It's on the poster. So if that's the crux of your film, it's not a very well-constructed film because, somebody should have raised their hand during the development meeting and said, how are we going to advertise this? Because it totally depends on the twist. Then, once she ends up in the dragon's lair, that's like the rest of the entire movie. I thought there'd be more. It's just all Dragon Cave. Which means that it's a pretty big budget, like around $70 million. So it seems that they spent most of that on the visual effects. But it was money well spent, because I must say that the dragon looks really good, particularly for a Netflix streaming movie. I was like, oh wow, that's pretty good. I thought the dragon was going to be in the dark the whole time, but oh no, that dragon came out, practically was doing a little dance. And also some of the VFX enhanced areas of the cave also look pretty good, so that was nice. The movie certainly has its clever moments and a few reveals, very good ones in fact, that really make an impression. There's one that I was like, oh, that's nice. But it just isn't enough. It just isn't enough. Overall, the script needed to layer in a lot more complexity, I think, to feel like a full movie. It needed at least, I think, 2 more passes over the script. I was like, you gotta add more. We just don't have enough here. I mean, I love Millie Bobby Brown, but it's not enough. It's a one-woman show. I guess 2 people because of the dragon. All right, so I think the most unique thing about the film, again, is how brutal and violent that it is. Medieval Europe was no walk in the park, as anyone who knows history even a little bit knows. Neither were the original Grimm's fairy tales, by the way. So to add that brutality and violence back into a fairy tale setting is pretty interesting. When Millie Bobby Brown gets thrown into the dragon pit, which is in the trailer, thank you, but the full sequence contrasting the horror of that with the fairy tale setup and they're not flinching and not like looking away, it was one of the most effective sequences I've seen. I mean, it was very visceral. I thought that was cool. I like that. When the movie is in that gear, it's its strongest. And seeing fairy tale princesses, that's all I'll say, like this in this setting is interesting, and I also like the camaraderie that's alluded to, hopefully amongst women. That was nice to see. But again, there just isn't enough of it. I'm like, here's your movie. And they're like, oh, well, we already made it. As I said, Millie Bobby Brown is fantastic here. And while this isn't one of her strongest projects, it does once again showcase that she's not just a great actress, but a great on-screen personality. Her complete disregard for how she looks. I mean, she's very pretty. She's a great actress. She's got a lot of personality, but again, she's not voguing. She doesn't care if she looks stupid, and that's great. It, in fact, makes her look her absolute best and extremely relatable and likable. I'm a big Millie Bobby Brown fan, and it's still a good calling card for her. Angela Bassett, as I noted, is stuck in an awkward role, but she holds her head high. Robin Wright and Nick Robinson, they go all in on their roles, although with Wright, she's just doing a medieval version of her famous House of Cards character. And that just made me kind of feel bad that she never really got more out of that, because she was so good in that. I thought I can't help myself. I thought it was interesting that Ray Winstone was in this movie, because he just gave some articles out saying that being in Black Widow destroyed his soul, and that he only did it for the money. But if he's gonna take so many paycheck gigs, because this is definitely a paycheck gig as well, he really ought to stop complaining about it. I mean, I wouldn't hire him for any more paycheck gigs. Who knows what he's going to complain about that one next? I mean, he was fine. But I mean, really, you're like, Ray Winstone, how much they pay you to be here? And he's like, a lot, enough that I came. And then Shohreh Aghdashloo is very well cast as the voice of the dragon. A dragon who, by the way, is surprisingly sadistic. I mean, that's all I'll say, but it certainly kept things interesting. And again, the VFX on the dragon are excellent, very strong. So Damsel's fine, like for Millie Bobby Brown fans, right? You eat it up with a spoon. Those who are down for some girl power, I mean, it's definitely a girl power movie. If you really like fantasy movies, they have some interesting takes on fantasy, so that makes it interesting. And also, if you're kind of bored, right? We know that. We know that. Your dinner's sitting in front of you getting cold. You need something to click on. You've been scrolling for a while. You can click on Damsel and you'll have a fine evening. I mean, it's a little under 2 hours. It'll give you something to watch. But again, as I said, keep your expectations low. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can definitely watch it. So that's my review of Damsel, hitting Netflix in just a few hours on Friday, March 8th. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.